Chapter 6, The Masquerade. Thank you to those of you who left a review. I really appreciate it. Hope you like this next section. I've expanded on the Harry drama. You know how he likes to sulk and hold everything in, right? That's exactly what he's doing until he can't take it anymore. Enjoy. Chapter 6. The Masquerade. The sound of the door closing echoed through the abandoned classroom with a finality that made Harry's chest tighten. He sat there for a long moment, staring at the wooden barrier that separated him from the rest of the world, before the reality of his situation truly began to sink in. He was alone, completely and utterly alone. Harry drew his knees up to his chest and wrapped his arms around them, trying to steady his breathing. The panic that had been building since his transformation now threatened to overwhelm him entirely. He needed to think, needed to process what had happened, but his mind felt like it was spinning out of control. Focus, he told himself. Just focus on one thing at a time. He started with his appearance. Harry conjured another small mirror and studied his reflection, still shocked by the aristocratic features staring back at him. The platinum blonde hair that fell in perfect waves, the sharp cheekbones, the pale skin. It was all so foreign, yet somehow felt right in a way that disturbed him. Harry studied the mirror closely, looking for subtle differences, but there were little to none. Everything was identical, down to the way his eyebrows arched and the shape of his lips. I'm a Malfoy, Harry thought, and the words felt strange even in his own mind. I'm actually a Malfoy. Hours passed in a blur of anxious thoughts and restless pacing. Harry tried to occupy himself by examining the abandoned classroom, searching through old textbooks and dusty supplies, but nothing could distract him from the magnitude of what had happened. Every few minutes, he would catch sight of his reflection in the window or in a piece of broken glass, and the shock would hit him all over again. As the night wore on, Harry began to realize just how unprepared he was for this situation. He had no food, no water, no way to contact the outside world. Draco had left him with nothing but the clothes on his back and his wand. Speaking of which, Harry suddenly realized something that made his stomach drop. He patted his pockets frantically, searching for something that wasn't there. The invisibility cloak was gone. That bastard, Harry muttered, remembering how Draco had casually mentioned needing it to get back to his dormitory undetected. He took it. He actually took it. Anger flared in Harry's chest, hot and bitter. Not only had Draco abandoned him in this impossible situation, but he'd also taken the one thing that might have allowed Harry to move around the castle without being seen. The betrayal stung more than Harry cared to admit. The first day passed slowly, with Harry alternating between bouts of panic and forced calm. He tried to transfigure some of his quills into food, but the results were barely edible, tasteless, and with the texture of cardboard. The water he conjured from the air had a metallic taste that made him gag. By the second day, Harry was beginning to understand just how dire his situation was. He had no way to leave the room without being seen, no way to get proper food or water, and no way to contact anyone who might help him. The abandoned classroom felt less like a sanctuary and more like a prison. He spent hours staring out the window, watching other students go about their daily routines. Harry could see the great hall from where he sat, and the sight of his classmates eating proper meals made his stomach cramp with hunger. He wondered if anyone had noticed his absence yet. Were Ron and Hermione looking for him? Had they reported him missing? The thought of his friends sent a pang of longing through his chest. He missed them desperately, but how could he face them looking like this? How could he explain that he wasn't really Harry Potter at all, but rather the brother of their sworn enemy? By the third day, Harry was desperate. The transfigured food was making him sick, and he was weak from lack of proper nourishment. He knew he had to take the risk of leaving the room, even if it meant potentially being discovered. That evening, after the corridors had grown quiet and most students had retired to their dormitories, Harry made his decision. He couldn't stay hidden forever, and he needed real food if he was going to survive long enough for Draco to return. Harry examined his appearance carefully in the mirror. His Gryffindor robes were an obvious problem. They would immediately identify him as being in the wrong house, especially if he was trying to pass as Draco. He stripped them off, leaving him in his white shirt, black trousers, and standard black school robes without house colors. Next, he tackled his hair. The platinum blonde locks fell naturally into the same style as Draco's, but Harry had always kept his hair slightly messier. He used water to slick it back, creating the perfect, controlled look that Draco favored. The change was subtle, but it made all the difference. Harry took a deep breath and opened the door to the abandoned classroom. The corridor was dark and empty, lit only by the occasional torch. He moved carefully, keeping to the shadows and listening for any sounds that might indicate someone else was nearby. The path to the Great Hall was treacherous, requiring him to navigate several staircases and corridors that were usually busy during the day. Harry's heart pounded with every step, terrified that someone would see him and recognize that something was wrong. He was almost to the Great Hall when disaster struck. "Mr. Malfoy." The voice came from behind him, cold and familiar. Harry's blood turned to ice as he slowly turned around to face Professor Snape. The potions master was standing in the shadows, his dark eyes fixed on Harry with an expression of suspicion. "Professor," Harry said, trying to keep his voice steady and adopt the slightly superior tone that Draco always used when speaking to teachers. "What are you doing wandering the corridors at this hour?" Snape asked, stepping closer. "And more importantly, what are you doing here at all? You're supposed to be at the manor, recovering from your illness." Harry's mind raced. He had to think fast, had to come up with an explanation that would satisfy Snape without arousing further suspicion. I was feeling better," Harry said, trying to mimic Draco's speech patterns. "I returned this evening, but I couldn't sleep. I thought perhaps some fresh air might help." Snape's eyes narrowed. "Fresh air? In the dungeons?" "I was heading to the grounds," Harry said weakly. "Were you?" Snape's voice was dangerously quiet. "And I suppose you thought you'd take a detour through the Great Hall first." Harry realized his mistake immediately. The Great Hall was in the opposite direction from any route that would lead outside. He'd been caught in a lie, and Snape knew it. "I apologize, Professor," Harry said, lowering his head in what he hoped was a suitably contrite manner. "I'm still feeling somewhat disoriented from the illness." Snape studied him for a long moment, and Harry was certain he was about to be exposed. But then the potions master's expression shifted slightly, taking on a look of what might have been concern. "Indeed," Snape said slowly. "You do look rather pale. Perhaps you returned too soon." "Perhaps," Harry agreed, not trusting himself to say more. "Come," Snape said, turning and beginning to walk toward the dungeons. "I'll escort you back to your dormitory. You need rest, not midnight wanderings." Harry had no choice but to follow. As they walked, he tried to keep his breathing steady and his movements natural. He was acutely aware of Snape's presence beside him, of the way the older man's eyes seemed to be studying him constantly. "Your mother was quite worried when she heard you were ill," Snape said conversationally as they descended into the dungeons. "I was hoping you would have been feeling better by now." "She worries too much," Harry replied, hoping that was the sort of thing Draco would say. "Perhaps. But her concern is understandable, given your recent difficulties." Harry wasn't sure what difficulties Snape was referring to, but he nodded as if he understood. They continued in silence until they reached the entrance to the Slytherin common room. "I trust you remember the password?" Snape asked, his tone suggesting that forgetting it would be suspicious. Harry's heart sank. Of course he didn't know the password. How could he? But he couldn't admit that without revealing himself. "Of course," he said, stepping forward and hoping that somehow the entrance would open for him. It didn't. Harry stood there for a moment, staring at the blank wall, his mind racing. Behind him, he could feel Snape's eyes boring into his back. "Well," Snape prompted. Harry began, then stopped. He was trapped. If he couldn't get into the Slytherin common room, Snape would know something was wrong. Just then, the wall began to slide open, and Harry felt a surge of relief. But his relief was short-lived when he realized that someone was coming out of the common room. Blaise Zabini emerged from the entrance, looking surprised to see them. "Draco," Blaise said, his eyebrows raised. "What are you doing out here? I thought you were still at home." "He returned this evening," Snape said before Harry could answer. "But he seems to have forgotten the password. Perhaps his illness affected his memory more than he realized." Blaise's expression shifted to one of concern. "Are you all right? You look different somehow." Harry's heart skipped a beat. "I'm fine," he said quickly, "just tired." "The password is Serpent's Honor," Blaise said, looking at Harry strangely. "Are you sure you're feeling well?" "Just tired," Harry repeated, stepping toward the entrance. "Thank you. See that you get some rest," Snape said sternly. "And no more midnight wanderings. If I find you out of your dormitory again tonight, you'll be serving detention regardless of your recent illness." "Yes, Professor," Harry said, practically fleeing into the common room. The Slytherin common room was exactly as Harry had imagined it would be: dark, elegant, and intimidating. Green and silver hangings adorned the walls, and the furniture was made of dark wood and leather. A fire crackled in the fireplace, casting dancing shadows across the room. Blaise followed him in, still looking concerned. "Seriously, Draco, are you all right? You're acting strange." "I'm fine," Harry said, looking around the room and trying to orient himself. "Just the illness. It's left me feeling disoriented, tired." "What did you have, anyway?" Blaise asked, settling into one of the leather chairs. "Your letters were pretty vague." "Food poisoning," Harry said, remembering what Draco had mentioned. "Something I ate didn't agree with me." "That's rough. Your mother must have been beside herself. She's always fretting about you." "She was," Harry agreed, though he had no idea what Narcissa Malfoy's reaction had actually been. "Well, you should probably get some sleep," Blaise said, standing up. "You look exhausted." Harry nodded, but he realized he had another problem. He had no idea where Draco's dormitory was, let alone which bed was his. He looked around helplessly, hoping for some clue. "Are you coming?" Blaise asked, heading toward a corridor that led off from the main room. "Yes," Harry said, following him. "I'm just trying to remember where I put something." Blaise led him down a corridor lined with doors, stopping at one near the end. "Home, sweet home," he said, pushing the door open. The dormitory was much like the Gryffindor equivalent, with 5 beds arranged around the room. Harry looked around, trying to figure out which one was Draco's. "Draco," Blaise said, looking at him strangely. "Your bed is right there, where it's always been." Harry followed Blaise's gaze to a bed near the window. The trunk at the foot of it had D. Malfoy emblazoned on it in silver letters. "Right," Harry said, moving toward it. "I told you I'm still disoriented. Maybe you should see Madame Pomfrey tomorrow," Blaise suggested. "This seems like more than just a mild sickness." "I'm sure I'll be fine after some sleep," Harry said, sitting on the edge of the bed. The other boys in the dormitory, Harry recognized Crabbe, Goyle, and Theodore Nott, were already asleep or getting ready for bed. They barely acknowledged his presence, which Harry was grateful for. Blaise changed into his pajamas and climbed into his own bed. "Good night, Draco," he said. "I'm glad you're feeling better." "Good night," Harry replied, waiting until Blaise had settled before he dared to move. Being in the Slytherin dormitory felt surreal. Harry had spent 5 years viewing these boys as enemies, and now he was sharing a room with them. He could hear Crabbe snoring loudly, and Goyle was muttering something in his sleep. It was strange to realize that they were just normal teenagers, not the monsters he'd sometimes imagined them to be. Harry changed into the pajamas he found in Draco's trunk, trying not to think about the fact that he was wearing another person's clothes. Everything felt wrong. The bed, the room, the identity he was wearing like an ill-fitting costume. Sleep was nearly impossible. Every sound made him jump, terrified that someone would discover his deception. He lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and wondering what Draco was doing at that moment. Had he confronted his parents? Had he learned the truth about what happened to them? Eventually, exhaustion won out, and Harry drifted into an uneasy sleep filled with dreams of platinum hair and silver eyes. He was awakened by the sound of the dormitory door opening. Harry's eyes snapped open, and he saw a figure silhouetted in the doorway. For a moment, he thought it might be another student returning from the bathroom, but then the figure stepped into the room and Harry's heart stopped. It was Draco. The real Draco stood in the doorway, looking shocked to see Harry lying in his bed. For a moment, they stared at each other in mutual horror, both realizing the catastrophic situation they were in. Draco's eyes widened, and he glanced quickly at the other sleeping boys before grabbing Harry's arm and pulling him toward a large wardrobe in the corner of the room rather roughly and abruptly. "Get in," Draco hissed, shoving Harry into the cramped space among the hanging robes. Harry pressed himself against the back of the wardrobe, trying to make himself as small as possible. Through the crack in the door, he could see Draco quickly climbing into his bed just as Blaise began to stir. "Draco." Blaise's voice was sleepy and confused. "Did you just come back from somewhere?" "Bathroom," Draco said casually, though Harry could hear the tension in his voice. "Oh," Blaise seemed to accept this explanation. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Draco said. "Much better. Good, you were acting really strange last night. I was worried about you. Strange how? Draco asked, and Harry caught the sharp note of concern in his voice. Just different, like you'd forgotten things, basic things. You couldn't even remember the password to get in. I was still recovering, Draco said smoothly. The illness affected my memory temporarily, if you say so. Blaze sounded skeptical, but you seem much more like yourself this morning. The other boys began to wake up, and Harry listened to their conversations with growing anxiety. They were asking Draco about his time at home, about his illness, about his parents. Draco answered smoothly, but Harry could hear the strain in his voice. Finally, after what felt like hours, the other boys began to get ready for the day. Harry heard them gathering their things and talking about their classes. One by one, they left the dormitory until only Draco remained. The wardrobe door opened, and Harry tumbled out, his muscles cramped from being in the confined space. "What the hell are you doing here?" Draco demanded, his voice low but furious. Harry straightened up, rubbing his sore neck. "I had to eat something. I couldn't survive on transfigured food any longer. So you decided to impersonate me." Draco's eyes were blazing with anger. "Do you have any idea how dangerous that was?" "I didn't have a choice," Harry shot back. "You left me with nothing, no food, no water, no way to contact anyone, and you took my invisibility cloak. I needed it to get back to my dormitory without being seen," Draco said defensively. "And what about me?" Harry demanded. "What was I supposed to do? Starved to death while you went home to play detective? You were supposed to stay hidden. I tried, but 3 days of eating transfigured quills was making me sick. I had to take the risk." Draco stared at him for a moment, and Harry could see the conflict playing out on his face. Anger, frustration, and something that might have been guilt. "You could have ruined everything," Draco said finally, "if someone had figured out who you really were." "But they didn't," Harry interrupted. "I was careful. I changed my hair. I tried to act like you. Blaze said you were acting strange, that you've forgotten basic things. I got through it," Harry said. "And I'm still here, aren't I?" Draco shook his head, looking exhausted. "This is madness. We can't keep this up." "Then you better have found some answers," Harry said. "Because I can't go back to that room. I can't live on transfigured food and hope that no one discovers me." "I did find answers," Draco said quietly. "But you're not going to like them." Harry felt his stomach drop. "What did you learn?" But before Draco could answer, they heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Someone was coming back to the dormitory. "We can't talk here," Draco said urgently. "You have access to the room of requirement, right? Meet me there after midnight." "How am I supposed to get there without being seen?" Harry asked. Draco pulled something from his robes, the invisibility cloak. "Here, but be careful. And don't let anyone see you leaving." The footsteps were getting closer. Harry grabbed the cloak and looked around frantically for another way out. The dormitory had no windows, they were deep in the dungeons, and there was nowhere to hide except back in the wardrobe. "Just wait," Draco whispered urgently. "I'll get rid of whoever it is." Harry pressed himself against the wall as the dormitory door opened. He could hear voices, Blaze and Theodore, discussing something about a transfiguration essay they'd forgotten about. "I'm just grabbing my notes," Blaze was saying. "Going to grab some breakfast. Then we can work on it in the common room." "Fine," Theodore replied. "But hurry up, I'm hungry." Harry held his breath as the two boys rummaged through their belongings. After what felt like an eternity, they finally left, their voices fading as they walked back toward the common room and then out the portrait, which swung behind them as they left for breakfast. "They'll be coming back to the common room soon," Draco said quietly. "You need to leave now before anyone else comes back." "Where am I supposed to go?" Harry asked, throwing the invisibility cloak over himself. "I don't know," Draco said, his voice strained. "Just somewhere where nobody else is. We'll figure this out tonight." Harry nodded, even though Draco couldn't see him, and slipped out of the dormitory. He moved carefully through the corridor, his heart pounding with every step. The common room was empty, as Draco had said. He made out to the main corridor with no incident. However, as he walked, unsure of where to go, he heard familiar voices approaching from around the corner. "Can't believe McGonagall assigned another essay," someone was saying. "As if we don't have enough work already." Harry recognized the voice immediately. It was Ron. He pressed himself against the wall, hoping they would pass without incident, but his foot caught on an uneven stone. The cloak slipped slightly, and for a moment his face was visible and the cloak fell off of him and pooled unnoticed around his feet. Ron, who had been walking with Dean Thomas, looked directly at him. Their eyes met for a split second, and Harry saw recognition flash across his friend's face, but not the kind of recognition he'd hoped for. "Sod off, Malfoy," Ron said with disgust, not even breaking stride. Harry stood frozen, watching as Ron and Dean continued down the corridor, completely unaware that they had just dismissed their best friend. The casual contempt in Ron's voice hit Harry like a physical blow. He exhaled slowly, a shaky breath that seemed to carry all the weight of his new reality. Ron had looked right at him and seen only Draco Malfoy, the enemy, the rival, the person he'd been taught to despise. Harry pulled the cloak back over his head and walked away, his chest tight with an emotion he couldn't quite name. He wasn't sure where he was going, but he knew he needed to find somewhere quiet, somewhere he could be alone with the devastating truth of what his life had become. The look on Draco's face before he'd left had filled him with dread, but this moment with Ron had driven home the reality of his situation even more clearly. Whatever Draco had learned at home, it was clear that their situation had just become much more complicated. Chapter 7, The Weight of Truth. Chapter 7, The Weight of Truth, the room of requirement, materialized around Harry as he paced anxiously in the seventh-floor corridor. He had been thinking desperately about needing a private place to meet, somewhere no one would find them, and the room had responded by creating a comfortable space with 2 armchairs positioned near a warm fireplace. Heavy tapestries covered the walls, muffling any sound that might escape, and the lighting was dim and intimate. Harry had been waiting for nearly 20 minutes when the door finally opened and Draco slipped inside. Even in the subdued light, Harry could see the exhaustion written across his face, the same face that Harry now wore. There were dark circles under Draco's eyes, and his usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled. "You look terrible," Harry said without preamble. "Thanks," Draco replied dryly, closing the door behind him and casting a silencing charm. "You don't look much better." It was true. Harry barely got any sleep the night before, and now with bumping into Ron, sleep seemed like it would never come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ron's face, heard the casual dismissal in his voice. "Sod off, Malfoy." The words echoed in his mind like a curse. "So," Harry said, settling into one of the armchairs, "what did you learn?" Draco took the chair opposite him, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated. Everything about our situation is complicated," Harry said impatiently. "Just tell me what happened." Draco was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "I asked my mother about the baby, the one she told me she lost. And she confirmed it. She said she had twins, but one of them died during childbirth." Draco's jaw tightened. "She said they were devastated, that they'd been so excited to have 2 sons, and then—" "Then what?" "Then she started crying," Draco said quietly. "Real tears. Not the calculated kind she uses when she wants something. She seemed genuinely grief-stricken." Harry felt a strange pang at the thought of Narcissa Malfoy mourning a lost child, mourning him. "What about your father?" He was harder to read. He seemed sad, but also guarded, like he was being careful about what he said. Draco shifted in his chair, his expression troubled. "I tried to ask more questions, but I couldn't push too hard without revealing that I knew something." "Did you learn anything else?" "The baby's name," Draco said. "They called him Demetri Malfoy. My father told me in confidence that they buried him in the family cemetery on our property." Harry's breath caught. Demetri Malfoy. The name felt strange on his tongue, foreign yet somehow meaningful. "That was supposed to be my name." "It was your name," Draco corrected, "before someone turned you into Harry Potter." The weight of that statement settled over them both. Harry had spent his entire life believing he was James and Lily Potter's son, only to discover that he was actually Demetri Malfoy, presumed dead and buried in a family cemetery. "But here's the thing," Draco continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "I couldn't stop thinking about it, about the whole story. Something felt off." "Off how?" "Little things. The way my parents looked at each other when they thought I wasn't watching. The fact that my mother has never once visited that grave in all the years I've lived there. The way my father's hands shook when he told me about the burial." Draco leaned forward, his eyes intense. "So I decided to investigate." Harry felt his stomach drop. "What did you do?" I went to the cemetery. In the middle of the night, I found the headstone. It was small, simple, just the name, not even a date. Draco's voice was getting quieter, more strained. Brought a shovel from the groundskeeper's shed. You didn't, Harry breathed. I did. Draco's hands were clenched into fists in his lap. I dug up my brother's grave, Harry. I desecrated what I thought was a child's final resting place because I had to know the truth. The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fire. Harry could see the trauma of that night written across Draco's face, the way his shoulders were tensed, the slight tremor in his hands. What did you find? Harry asked gently. Nothing. Draco's voice was hollow. The coffin was there, but it was empty. No body, no clothes, nothing. Just a tiny, empty box buried in the ground to maintain the illusion that Demetri Malfoy died at birth. Harry felt something cold settle in his chest. So they've been lying this whole time. Not just lying. They've been maintaining an elaborate deception for 16 years. Draco looked up at Harry, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Do you know what it's like to dig up what you think is your brother's grave? To open a coffin, not knowing if you're about to see a tiny skeleton or if you're going to find nothing? I was terrified. Terrified that I'd see something that would haunt me forever, and equally terrified that I'd find nothing and confirm that my entire life has been built on lies. Draco, Harry began, but the other boy cut him off. I stood there for an hour, just staring at that empty coffin, trying to process what it meant. They mourned you, Harry. They grieved for you. But they also buried an empty box and let me grow up believing my twin brother was dead. Harry didn't know what to say. He could see the pain in Draco's eyes, the betrayal and confusion. It was a mirror of his own feelings, magnified by the horror of what Draco had had to do to uncover the truth. I'm sorry, Harry said finally. I'm sorry you had to go through that. It was my choice, Draco said, though his voice suggested it had been anything but easy. I needed to know. We needed to know. They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. Harry found himself thinking about the empty grave, about the parents who had grieved him while he was alive, about the elaborate deception that had shaped both their lives. What have you been doing while I was gone? Draco asked eventually. Harry's jaw tightened. Trying to survive. Trying to figure out how to exist without anyone discovering who I really am. The abandoned classroom. For the first 3 days, yes. Living on transfigured food that tasted like cardboard, drinking conjured water that made me sick, and slowly going insane from isolation. Harry's voice was bitter. Then I had to risk impersonating you to get real food, which led to me spending a night in your dormitory, terrified that someone would figure out I wasn't you. Draco looked genuinely guilty. I'm sorry. I should have thought. You should have thought about a lot of things, Harry interrupted. You took my invisibility cloak, left me with no food, no water, no way to contact anyone. You just abandoned me there. I was trying to get us answers, and I was trying not to die of starvation. Harry's voice rose. Do you know what it's like to be completely alone, not knowing who you are, not knowing if you'll ever have a normal life again? Do you know what it's like to have your best friend look right at you and tell you to sod off because he sees you as his enemy? Draco's eyes widened. Ron. I ran into him in the corridor. He looked right at me and saw Draco Malfoy, told me to sod off without a second thought. Harry's voice cracked slightly. My best friend didn't recognize me. He saw me as someone to be dismissed, someone he despised. Harry. No, you don't understand. My entire life has been erased. My friends don't know me. My appearance isn't real. Even my birthday is a lie. I have nothing left, Draco, nothing. The room fell silent again, but this time the silence was heavy with tension. Harry could feel his emotions building, all the stress and fear and loneliness of the past few days threatening to overwhelm him. We need to tell someone, Harry said finally. We can't handle this alone. Tell someone what? Draco asked. That we're brothers, that I've been living a lie my whole life too. Tell someone who can help us figure out what happened, who can help us understand why this was done to us. Who? Draco demanded. Who do you trust enough to tell them something like this? Harry thought for a moment. Dumbledore. He has to know something about this. And Hermione. She's brilliant. She might be able to help us research what happened. Dumbledore. Draco's voice was sharp. The man who's probably been orchestrating this deception from the beginning. You want to tell him that we've figured out his little secret. He's the headmaster. He's the man who's been lying to you for 16 years. Draco stood up, beginning to pace. If anyone knows the truth about what happened to us, it's him, and if he wanted us to know, he would have told us already. Then who do you suggest? Harry asked, standing as well. Snape, Draco said without hesitation. He's my godfather. He's known my family for years. If anyone would help us get to the bottom of this, it would be him. Snape, Harry's voice was incredulous. The man who spent 5 years making my life miserable, the man who hates me more than anyone else in this castle. He doesn't hate you, Draco said, and his voice changed tone when he decided to say. He hates Harry Potter. But you're not Harry Potter, are you? You're Demetri Malfoy. You're apparently my brother. I'm still the same person, Harry shouted. Changing my name and my face doesn't change who I am inside, doesn't it? Draco shot back. Because from where I'm standing, you're acting like a scared, paranoid child who doesn't know who to trust. And you're acting like an arrogant prat who thinks he knows better than everyone else. Harry's hands were shaking with anger. Some things never change, do they, Malfoy? Don't call me that, Draco said coldly. We're brothers, remember, or have you forgotten that already? How can I forget? You look exactly like me. Every time I see you, I'm reminded that my entire life has been a lie. Well, excuse me for existing. Draco's voice was rising to match Harry's. I'm sorry that finding out you have a brother has been so traumatic for you. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Do I? Because it sounds like you're blaming me for something that was done to both of us. Harry felt something snap inside him. The stress, all the fear, all the loneliness and confusion of the past few days came rushing to the surface. Maybe I am blaming you. Maybe if you hadn't been so obsessed with proving your potions were better than mine, we never would have discovered any of this. So you'd rather live a lie. Draco's eyes were blazing. You'd rather go your whole life not knowing who you really are. Yes, Harry shouted, and the word hung in the air between them like a physical blow. Yes, I'd rather live a lie than deal with this. I'd rather be Harry Potter, son of James and Lily Potter, than be Demetri Malfoy, son of people who apparently gave me away and lied about it. Draco stared at him for a long moment, his face cycling through emotions too quickly for Harry to follow. Hurt, anger, betrayal, and something that might have been disappointment. Fine, Draco said finally, his voice cold and controlled. Live your lie, but don't expect me to help you maintain it. He turned and walked toward the door, his movements sharp and angry. Where are you going? Harry called after him. Away from you, Draco replied without turning around, since my existence is apparently so traumatic for you. The door slammed behind him with a resounding bang that seemed to echo through the room for far longer than it should have. Harry stood there for a moment, breathing hard, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Then he collapsed into one of the armchairs and put his head in his hands. The room around him seemed to shift and change, responding to his emotional state. The comfortable armchairs became a single bed, the fireplace dimmed to almost nothing, and the walls pressed in closer. It was as if the room was trying to cocoon him, to protect him from the world outside. But there was no protection from the truth, no hiding from what he discovered about himself and his life. Harry lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and tried to process everything that had happened. Draco's revelation about the empty grave confirmed what they'd both suspected, that his death had been faked, that he'd been given to the Potters for reasons they still didn't understand. But the fight they'd just had made him realize something else. They couldn't handle this alone. They needed help, needed someone with the knowledge and resources to help them understand what had happened and why. The question was who they could trust. Dumbledore seemed like the obvious choice, but Draco was right. If the headmaster had been involved in the deception, he might not be willing to help them uncover the truth. Snape was Draco's suggestion, but Harry couldn't imagine confiding in the man who'd spent years tormenting him. Harry was still lost in his thoughts when about an hour later he heard a soft knock at the door. He sat up, his heart racing. Had someone discovered the room? Had his argument with Draco attracted attention? Harry. Draco's voice came through the door, quieter now, almost hesitant. Can I come in? Harry hesitated for a moment, then waved his hand to unlock the door. Draco stepped inside, and Harry could see that he was carrying a large plate covered with a napkin. I brought you food, Draco said, setting the plate on a small table that appeared beside the bed. Real food. Harry lifted the napkin to reveal a selection of sandwiches, fruit, and pumpkin pasties. His stomach growled loudly, reminding him that he hadn't eaten anything substantial in days. Brought you a few chocolate biscuits, too. I like them, and I thought maybe you would too, Draco told him, and sounded a bit embarrassed after admitting it. Thank you, Harry said quietly, picking up a sandwich and taking a large bite. Then he took a few bites of the biscuits, but never admitted to Draco that they had always been his favorite. The taste of real food after days of transfigured substitutes was almost overwhelming. I'm sorry, Draco said, taking a seat on the edge of the bed. I shouldn't have left you like that. I shouldn't have left you at all, actually. I was so focused on getting answers that I didn't think about what you were going through. Harry swallowed his next bite of sandwich and looked at Draco. I'm sorry, too. I didn't mean what I said about wishing we'd never found out. I was just overwhelmed. I know, Draco said. I've been overwhelmed too. This whole situation is insane. It's overwhelming. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Harry eating and Draco watching him with what might have been concern. It was strange, Harry thought, how quickly they'd gone from enemies to whatever they were now. Brothers, technically, but that word still felt foreign and uncomfortable. We do need to tell someone, Harry said finally. You were right about that. I was thinking about what you said, Draco replied. About Dumbledore and Hermione. Maybe I need to talk to my parents again. Harry looked up from his food, surprised. Your parents? You were just there, you just tried to get information. Our parents, Draco corrected. Their reaction seemed genuine, being sad, upset that their child died. But I felt that something was off. There were things that were unsaid. I should have asked more questions. I guess I was just shocked that they admitted it, that I had a twin. And this time, I want to talk to my parents alone, each one, see if their stories add up. I also want to investigate in our library in the office, try to find more records, birth, death, and maybe I can get more ancestry books about the Potters. But they've been lying to you for 16 years, Harry pointed out. You think they're just going to tell you the truth now? Which is exactly why I need to confront them, Draco said. If I let on even just a little bit that I know they're lying, they'll have to tell the truth. Harry considered this. You think they'll actually admit it? I think when I hint around that I know something's not right, that my mother will break down and tell me everything she didn't want to say before. Draco's expression was determined. She's not as strong as she pretends to be, and my father. He might be able to lie to me once, but I won't let him lie to me twice. When? Harry asked. I've been thinking about that, Draco said. Mid-semester break is coming. I could take the train home. And then what? Am I supposed to just stay here? Yes, undercover, Draco said. Harry frowned, not liking where this was going. Can't just sit around waiting, wondering. I already did that. I don't want to do that again. I won't let them lie again. I will demand answers. I know they have them, Draco promised and looked at him. I'm coming back to Hogwarts with more answers this time. And if they won't give answers, Harry dared to ask. Draco hesitated, looking over at the wall. Then I'll tell them the truth. Harry's brows went up, pale, light brows and grey eyes looked questioning. You're going to tell them about me? They are the ones that buried an empty casket. They know you're not dead. They are the ones with the secrets, Harry, not us, Draco said and got up, reading to leave. I'm going to go pack. Harry didn't know what to say. He was overwhelmed with everything that had transpired so far and tired. Tired of staying low, tired of being left, tired of not having answers, and lonely. He hadn't talked to his friends in days. I'll be back on Sunday, Draco said and sighed. Just give me some time. I just gave you 3 days. Harry argued, but it came out quiet, defeated. I won't let it go this time, Draco said and hesitated before admitting, I promise I'll come back with answers. Next chapter. While Draco's out searching for more answers, Harry gets lonely and tired of pretending, and he reaches out to Hermione. Will he tell her the whole truth, a half-truth, or nothing at all? Hang tight to find out. Chapter 8. Breaking the Surface. Chapter 8. Breaking the Surface. The room of requirement had become Harry's prison as much as his sanctuary. Days had passed since Draco left for home, and the isolation was becoming unbearable. Harry had conjured a calendar on the wall and marked off each day with increasingly frantic strokes, watching the hours crawl by with agonizing slowness. He tried to occupy himself with reading. The room had helpfully provided a small library of books about magical heritage and bloodline magic, but his mind kept wandering. Every creak of the castle, every distant voice in the corridors made him freeze, wondering if someone had discovered his hiding place. To stave off the loneliness, Harry had begun making regular trips to the kitchens. Sometimes he went under the invisibility cloak, but increasingly he found himself going as he was, looking like Draco Malfoy. The corridors were largely empty, with most students gone for the mid-semester break, making it easier to move around undetected. The house elves had been surprisingly unsurprised by his transformation. Darby would greet him warmly, offering plates of food and gentle conversation, while Winky would fuss over him in her quiet way. Even the other elves seemed to take his changed appearance in stride, as if they'd been expecting it. "Master Harry is looking more like himself now," Darby had said cryptically during one visit, his tennis ball-sized eyes twinkling with something that might have been knowing satisfaction. "What do you mean by that, Darby?" Harry had asked, taken aback at the house elf recognizing him. But the elf had just smiled and bustled away to fetch more treacle tart. The comment had stuck with Harry. There was something in the way the elves looked at him now, not confused or surprised, but almost relieved, as if they'd been seeing through something all along. Harry filed the thought away for later. Darby had been a Malfoy house elf for years before Harry had freed him. If anyone might know something about what had happened to him as a baby, it would be Darby. But that conversation would have to wait. For now, Harry was content to accept their food and their company, grateful for any interaction that reminded him he still existed. Harry developed a routine: early morning trips to the kitchens, late-night visits to the library to research glamours and bloodline magic, and long walks through the empty corridors just to feel like he still existed. But on the sixth day, his luck ran out. He was returning from the kitchens, arms full of food, and feeling more confident than he'd been in days, when he rounded a corner and nearly collided with a group of third-year Hufflepuffs. In his haste to avoid them, he'd forgotten he was no longer wearing the invisibility cloak. He had, luckily, put the glamour back over his scar, just in case he was stopped looking like Malfoy. "Sorry," he called out automatically, then froze as they turned to look at him. "Oh, it's just Malfoy," one of them said dismissively. "Watch where you're going." They continued on their way without a second glance, and Harry stood there for a moment, heart pounding. They'd seen him. They'd looked right at him and seen Draco Malfoy. He was safe for now, but the close call left him shaken. He was hurrying back toward the 7th floor when another voice called out behind him. "Draco, wait up." Harry turned to see Pansy Parkinson jogging toward him, her dark hair bouncing as she moved. His stomach dropped. Unlike the Hufflepuffs, Pansy knew Draco well. She'd notice if something was off. "Hi, Pansy," he said carefully, trying to remember how Draco spoke to her. They'd been friends since childhood, he recalled, close friends. "I thought you went home," she said, falling into step beside him. "You said you were leaving on the train last time I spoke to you." Harry's mind raced. "I changed my mind, decided to stay an extra week." Pansy frowned. "Why?" "You were so eager to get home and talk to your parents about something important." "It wasn't as urgent as I thought," Harry said quickly. "I realized I could use the time to catch up on some reading." "Reading?" Pansy's eyebrows shot up. "Since when do you choose reading over going home?" "Since now," Harry said, hoping his voice sounded more confident than he felt. "I've been working on a project for ancient runes." Pansy studied his face for a moment, and Harry had to resist the urge to fidget under her scrutiny. "You look tired," she said finally. "Are you feeling all right?" "Just haven't been sleeping well," Harry replied. "The castle's too quiet with everyone gone." "Well, you should come down to the common room tonight," Pansy said. "There's only a handful of us left, but we're having a game night. Cards, chess, that sort of thing. It'll be fun." Harry's heart sank. The last thing he wanted was to spend time pretending to be Draco in front of his housemates. "I don't know." "Come on," Pansy insisted. "You've been holed up wherever you've been hiding all week. A little social interaction will do you good." Harry realized he didn't have a choice. If he refused, it would look suspicious. "All right," he said reluctantly. "I'll be there." Pansy beamed. "Excellent. 8 o'clock." She paused. "Oh, and Draco, you might want to do something about your hair. Looks like you've been running your hands through it. It looks messy." Harry automatically reached up to smooth down his hair, Draco's hair, and nodded. "Right, thanks." As Pansy walked away, Harry felt a wave of panic wash over him. How was he supposed to spend an evening with Draco's friends? He barely knew them, and they'd certainly know something was wrong if he acted too strangely. But he didn't have a choice. He was committed now. That evening, Harry made his way to the Slytherin common room with his stomach in knots. He'd spent the afternoon trying to remember everything he knew about Draco's friendships, his mannerisms, his way of speaking. It wasn't much to go on. The common room was dimly lit and much quieter than Harry had ever seen it. Only 6 students remained. Pansy, 2 seventh-years he recognized but didn't know well, and 3 younger students who looked up at him with something resembling awe. "There he is," Pansy said warmly, patting the couch beside her. "Come sit. We're just starting a game of exploding snap." Harry joined the group, trying to appear relaxed while his nerves screamed at him to run. The conversation flowed around him, complaints about assignments, gossip about teachers, speculation about who was dating whom, and he found himself mostly nodding and making non-committal sounds. "You're awfully quiet tonight," observed Marcus Flint, one of the 7th-years. "Usually you're the first to join in when we're gossiping about the Gryffindors." "Just tired," Harry said, echoing his earlier excuse. "Haven't been sleeping well." "Maybe you should see Madame Pomfrey," suggested a 4th-year girl named Millicent. "She's got potions for that sort of thing." Harry nodded absently, his mind already racing ahead to how he could extract himself from this situation. He needed to be more careful, needed to avoid situations where he'd be expected to act like Draco for extended periods. As the evening wore on, the overwhelming sadness and confusion that had been building inside him for days finally reached a breaking point. He was living a lie, pretending to be someone he wasn't, while his real friends thought he'd disappeared. The weight of it all was crushing. When the game finally ended and the group began to disperse, Harry mumbled something about needing to finish an S and escape to the room of requirement. Once inside, he collapsed into a chair and put his head in his hands. He couldn't do this anymore. He couldn't keep hiding, couldn't keep pretending. He needed help, needed someone who cared about him to know he was alive and safe. The decision came to him suddenly, clearly. He needed to contact Hermione. Harry found parchment and a quill and began to write. "Hermione, I know you're probably worried about me, and I'm sorry for that. I'm safe, and I'm still at Hogwarts. I can't explain everything right now, but I need you to know that I'm okay. Please don't tell anyone else about this letter. I'll explain more when I can." He folded the letter carefully and made his way to the owlery. Hedwig was there, looking ruffled and concerned when she saw him. "I know I look different, girl," he whispered, stroking her feathers. "But it's still me. I need you to take this to Hermione and bring back her reply quickly. Can you do that for me?" Hedwig hooted softly and nuzzled his hand, then took the letter in her beak and flew out into the night. Harry spent the rest of the night pacing the room of requirement, alternating between relief at having contacted Hermione and terror at what her response might be. What if she didn't believe it was really him? What if she thought someone was playing a cruel joke? But when Hedwig returned the next morning, her reply was swift and direct. "Harry, thank God you're safe. I've been going out of my mind with worry. Ron and I have been searching the castle for you, asking everyone if they've seen you. The teachers won't tell us anything. I don't think they even know. Where are you? Are you in danger? I need to see you immediately. Meet me in the library tonight at 10 o'clock. I'll be in the restricted section. I have a pass. If you're in trouble, please let me help you. That's what friends are for." Harry stared at the letter for a long time, his heart aching. She was worried about him, wanted to help him. But how could he face her looking like Draco Malfoy? How could he explain what had happened without sounding completely insane? He spent the day wrestling with the problem, considering and discarding various solutions. He could tell her the truth outright, but would she believe him? He could try to avoid meeting her altogether, but that would only make her more worried and suspicious. And then, as he was absently running his hands through his hair, a nervous habit he'd apparently inherited from his true genetics, the solution struck him. Hair. He needed his old hair. Harry wrapped himself in the invisibility cloak and made his way to Gryffindor Tower. The portrait hole was locked, but he remembered the password from before the break. The common room was empty, moonlight streaming through the windows. He crept up the stairs to his dormitory, his heart pounding with every step. His roommates were all asleep, Ron snoring softly in his bed. Harry felt a pang of longing looking at his friends, at the life he'd been forced to abandon. His trunk was still there, untouched. He opened it carefully, trying not to make any noise, and found what he was looking for, his old hairbrush, still tangled with dark strands of hair. He pulled several strands free and slipped them into his pocket, then made his way back to the room of requirement. The Polyjuice potion was complex, but Harry had watched it being brewed before. The room helpfully provided all the ingredients he needed, and he worked through the night, following the instructions from memory. Never been particularly good at potions, but desperation was a powerful motivator. As dawn broke, the potion was finally ready. Harry held the hair over the cauldron, his hands shaking slightly. "Please work," he whispered, and dropped the strands into the bubbling liquid. The potion turned a familiar golden color, and Harry drank it down in one gulp. The transformation was immediate and painful, his features shifting, his hair darkening and becoming unruly, his eyes changing from silver to green. When it was over, Harry looked in the mirror and saw his own face staring back at him. Harry Potter with his messy black hair. He put on his glasses that he had swiped when he had been in the Gryffindor dorms. He looked thin and tired, but he looked like himself. He suddenly realized something was missing, the scar. He had put a simple glamour over it, to cover it when he was walking around the grounds as a Malfoy. He removed the glamour from that section on his forehead, and then looked into the mirror again to see the famous Harry Potter reflection, scar and all, looking back at him. The relief was overwhelming. For the first time in over a week, he felt like Harry Potter again. That evening, he made his way to the library, his heart racing with anticipation. Hermione was waiting for him in the restricted section, surrounded by books, and looking more worried than he'd ever seen her. "Harry," she whispered, jumping up and embracing him tightly. "Oh, thank God, I was so worried." "I'm okay," he said, hugging her back. "I'm safe." She pulled back to look at him, her eyes searching his face. "You look terrible. Have you been eating? Where have you been staying?" "I've been around," Harry said vaguely. "I can't go back to the dormitory right now. I can't attend classes." "Why not?" Hermione's voice was sharp with concern. "Harry, what's going on? Is this about those glamours we talked about before?" Harry hesitated. He planned to tell her everything, but now that he was here, the words seemed impossible to say. How could he explain that he discovered he was actually Draco Malfoy's twin brother, that his entire life had been a lie? "It's complicated," he said finally. "Yes, it has to do with the glamours. I can't explain everything right now, but I need you to know that I'm okay. I'm safe." Hermione studied his face for a long moment. "You're not telling me something important." "I know," Harry said quietly, "and I will tell you when I can. I'm trying to get more information. Things are complicated, but right now I need you to trust me." "Of course I trust you," Hermione said immediately. "But I'm worried about you. We all are. Ron, Neville, Seamus, Luna, Ginny, everyone's been asking about you. They miss you." Harry felt tears prick at his eyes. "I miss them too, more than you know." "Then come back," Hermione pleaded. "Whatever's wrong, we can figure it out together. That's what friends do." "I can't," Harry said, his voice breaking slightly. "Not yet, but I promise when I can tell you the truth, I will. You'll be the first to know." Hermione reached across the table and took his hand. "Are you in danger?" Harry considered the question. Was he in danger? He wasn't sure. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide his true identity, to fake his death and give him to the Potters. That suggested there were forces at work that he didn't understand, people who might not want the truth to come out. "I might be," he said honestly. "I don't know yet." "Then you need to tell Dumbledore," Hermione said firmly. "He can help you. He can protect you." "I'm not sure I can trust him," Harry said quietly. "I think he might already know about this, and if he does—" "You think he's involved in whatever your secret is?" Hermione questioned. "Yes," Harry said simply. "No details right now, Hermione, but yes. I think he's caught up in this just like he's caught up in everything else that's happened to me. I want to trust him, but I don't know if I can." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation settling between them. "What can I do then?" Hermione asked finally. "How can I help?" "Just be patient with me," Harry said. "I'm trying to figure this out, but I need time. And I need you to keep this conversation between us. But if you can, cover for me for a little while." "Why can't they see you? Ron wants to see you. He's been frantic," Hermione pressured. "I just can't, not right now. I told you, Hermione, it's complicated. It's not as simple as it looks," Harry responded with his hands outstretched. "Can you just cover for me, just for a while? Tell everyone I've been in the hospital wing something contagious. No visitors. Just for a while, just for a few more days." "Harry," Hermione began to say, and then reconsidered with a sigh. "I need more information." "No, Hermione, I need more information," Harry said, slightly exasperated. This isn't easy, and I want to tell you. I want to tell you everything, but the knowledge I have of what's going on is limited. Just give me some time to figure this out myself, and as soon as I have more information, I will tell you." Hermione stared at him for a long time and finally released a defeated sigh. "Okay, but promise me you'll be careful, and promise me you'll contact me if you need anything. And when you're ready, please tell me the truth, all of it." "I will. When I'm ready, I promise," Harry said, squeezing her hand. "What about Ron?" Hermione questioned. "Can I tell him that I saw you? What do you want me to say?" "You can say you talked to me by post. Tell him it's something that has to stay quiet for now, but tell him I'm okay. Tell him I'm safe. Tell him that when the right time comes, he'll know what's happening too," Harry said. Hermione's brows furrowed and she nodded, maybe sensing that whatever secret he had was a big one, not to be taken lightly. "If you need me at all," she began and leaned forward. "I know where to find you, I know," Harry responded. Later that evening, he locked himself in the room and settled down to wait for Draco's return, hoping his brother would come back with answers. Because Harry was beginning to suspect that the danger Hermione had asked about was very real indeed. The Polyjuice potion was beginning to wear off, and Harry watched in the mirror as his features slowly shifted back to Draco's. Dark hair became platinum blonde, green eyes became silver, and the familiar face of his enemy, his brother, looked back at him, but the scar shone boldly in the lighting of the room. Demetri, he thought, not Draco. He wasn't Draco. It was hard to comprehend. But for the first time since this all began, Harry felt a spark of hope. He wasn't alone anymore. Hermione knew he was alive, knew he was safe. And when Draco returned, they would face whatever came next together. The truth was out there, waiting to be discovered. And Harry Potter, or Demetri Malfoy, whoever he really was going to find it. Tilda, thank you to those of you who took the time to leave a review. In the next chapter, Draco finally comes back to Hogwarts with information about his family and the real reason why Harry was given away. Also, the twins discuss telling their secret to the people they trust the most. They also argue a bit because that's what former enemies' brothers do. Hee hee. 9. Chapter 9. The Price of Truth. Wow, you guys are a tough audience. Lol. So this obviously is not canon. Things that happened in the original story just aren't going to happen here. Think of this as familiar characters with a different story. This story is going to be long, too. I'm already past 25 chapters. As the story progresses, I do sometimes go back and do edits. I actually recently went back and edited the part where the only difference between Harry and Draco was the scar. I removed Harry's scar for reasons that will be explained later on. I need the twins to look exactly alike in future chapters without having to repeatedly put on a glamour or disguise to look alike. Also, the timing of things that happen in the story might be slightly different. In this story, Sirius is already dead, killed by Bellatrix. It hasn't really been mentioned yet, but will be discussed in later chapters. The timing of when Harry's parents were killed is also going to be when he was a young infant, not 15 months. I needed it to happen when he was tiny. Also, a huge part of the Harry Potter books was the fact that Voldemort's soul was divided into different pieces, the Horcruxes. In this story, there are no Horcruxes. In order to go the direction I want to go with this story, I had to omit the entire Horcrux storyline. It just makes the story too complicated. They have plenty of other challenges to overcome, as you will find out. And please remember that I'm not perfect. I'm trying to make the story as enjoyable as possible, but there are a lot of characters to consider, timelines to consider, and little nuances. I'm not J.K. Rowling, but I can dream. So if you guys are still with me, and you still want to continue reading, may I present Chapter 9. The Price of Truth. Harry was deep in a book about ancient bloodline curses when the door to the Room of Requirement opened. He looked up to see Draco stepping inside, looking windswept and exhausted from his journey. A heavy traveling bag hung from his shoulder, and his usually pristine appearance was disheveled. "You're back," Harry said, closing the book and setting it aside. The relief in his voice was unmistakable. He'd been alone for what felt like an eternity. "I said I would be," Draco replied, dropping his bag near the door. His eyes swept over the room, taking in the scattered books, the makeshift sleeping area, and Harry's somewhat improved appearance. "You look better than when I left." "I've been eating regularly," Harry said. "The house elves have been helpful." Draco nodded, then moved to sit in the chair across from Harry. For a moment they simply looked at each other, two identical faces, one exhausted from travel, the other from isolation. "Well," Harry asked finally, "what did you find out?" Draco was quiet for a long moment, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "More than I expected," he said finally. "Not as much as I wanted, but it's a start. Tell me." Draco took a deep breath. "My mother broke down completely when I pressed her. I told her that I knew about my twin, but that I needed to know more, deserved to know more. She told me everything, well, almost everything." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "When she was pregnant with us, Voldemort knew she was expecting twins." Harry felt his stomach drop. "Voldemort knew. My father had just become a Death Eater," Draco continued, his voice carefully controlled. "To prove his allegiance, Voldemort asked him and my mother to do two things." He met Harry's eyes. That one of their children would devote themselves to him when they came of age, become a Death Eater. "You," Harry said quietly. "Me," Draco confirmed, though I didn't know it was planned from birth. The second thing." He swallowed hard. "Voldemort wanted them to give their second child to him, not as a sacrifice, but as a child he could raise and mold into a perfect weapon. A muggle-hating Death Eater who would be completely devoted to the dark arts." Harry felt the blood drain from his face. "He wanted to raise me." "Yes." Draco's voice was barely above a whisper. "My mother was terrified. She knew what Voldemort was capable of, knew that if she gave you to him, you'd be lost forever. So she and my father made a desperate choice. They faked my death and gave you up for adoption," Draco finished. "They told Voldemort that the second baby had died during childbirth, buried an empty coffin, and secretly arranged for you to be placed with a family who would love you and keep you safe." Harry stared at him, trying to process the magnitude of what he was hearing. "They saved me. They did what they thought was best," Draco said carefully. "Though I couldn't get them to admit who they gave you to, they insisted they didn't know the details, that it was handled through intermediaries to protect everyone involved. But we know it was the Potters," Harry said. "Obviously." Draco rubbed his face tiredly. "Though how James and Lily Potter ended up with a Malfoy baby is still a mystery. That's a connection we'll have to figure out ourselves." Harry sat back in his chair, his mind reeling. "So Voldemort thinks I'm dead. Has thought you were dead for 16 years, Draco confirmed. "Which means if he ever finds out the truth, he'll want to finish what he started," Harry said grimly. "Either kill me or try to turn me into what he originally wanted." They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. Harry found himself thinking about Narcissa Malfoy, about a young mother so desperate to protect her child that she'd been willing to give him away rather than let him fall into Voldemort's hands. "Are you all right?" Draco asked eventually. "I don't know," Harry admitted. "It's unsettling, knowing that my entire existence has been shaped by Voldemort's plans. Even when I was supposed to be safe with the Potters, I was still living in the shadow of what he wanted from me." "Safe, though," Draco pointed out. "James and Lily Potter died protecting you. That has to count for something." "But they weren't really my parents," Harry said quietly. "They were just guardians, people who took in a child that wasn't theirs and loved him anyway. That doesn't make their sacrifice any less real," Draco said firmly. "They chose to protect you knowing the risks. That's more than most people would do." Harry nodded, but he could feel the familiar ache of loss settling in his chest. Everything he'd believed about his identity, his family, his place in the world, it had all been built on lies and half-truths. "I'm tired," he said suddenly. "Tired of hiding in this room, tired of eating and sleeping and reading the same books over and over. I feel like I'm going insane." "It's only been a week," Draco said. "A week too long." Harry stood up and began pacing. "I need to tell someone. I need to stop pretending that I can handle this alone." Draco's expression grew wary. "What do you mean?" He thought about lying, but it was fruitless. He might as well be honest. "I contacted Hermione. I met with her while wearing Polyjuice Potion, and I'm going to tell her the truth." "You what?" Draco's voice was sharp with alarm. "Harry, that was incredibly stupid. What if the potion had worn off early? What if someone had seen you?" "It lasted exactly an hour, just like it was supposed to," Harry said defensively. "And no one saw me." "The juice potion can be unpredictable," Draco snapped. "Especially when brewed by someone who's not particularly skilled at potions. You could have been exposed, could have put both of us in danger." "Well, I wasn't," Harry said, his own voice rising. "And I'm going to tell her whether you like it or not. I don't need your permission, Draco, and I'm fine at potions. Figured out I'm a Malfoy with a potion, didn't I? Draco pursed his lips. This affects both of us. Everything affects both of us. Harry interrupted. That's the problem. I can't make a single decision about my own life without considering how it impacts you, and I'm sick of it. Draco stood up as well, his face flushed with anger. So you're just going to tell her, just like that? Yes, Harry said firmly. Hermione is trustworthy. She won't tell anyone else, and she might be able to help us figure out what to do next. Help us how? By researching more potions, by digging through more dusty books. Draco's voice was sarcastic. We need real help, Harry, professional help. From who? Harry demanded. Dumbledore, who's probably been lying to me my entire life. The Ministry, who would probably hand me over to Voldemort if they knew the truth. Hermione is the only person I trust completely. Draco was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as he struggled with his emotions. Finally, he said, What about Ron? Are you going to tell him too? No, Harry said immediately. Not right now, at least. Ron would probably want to kill both of us if he found out I look like a Malfoy, that I am actually a Malfoy. He'd never be able to separate me from you in his mind. At least you're thinking clearly about something, Draco muttered. I'm thinking clearly about all of it, Harry insisted. Hermione can handle the truth. She's the smartest person I know, and she's been my friend for 5 years. If anyone can help us navigate this mess, it's her. Draco sank back into his chair, looking defeated. I don't like it. You don't have to like it, Harry said, but I'm telling her. The question is whether you want to be there when I do. Why would I want to be there? Because this affects you too, Harry said, echoing Draco's earlier words. Because she's going to have questions about both of us, and because... He paused, then continued more quietly, because I don't want to do this alone anymore. Something in Harry's voice seemed to reach Draco. His expression softened slightly, and he rubbed his temples. It's complicated. Everything about our situation is complicated, Harry said, but hiding from it isn't going to make it any easier. Draco was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire that had appeared in the room's fireplace. Finally, he looked up at Harry. Fine, I'll be there when you tell her. But if this goes badly, if she reacts poorly or decides to tell someone else, she won't, Harry said firmly. I trust her. I hope you're right, Draco said, because if you're not, we're both in serious trouble. Harry nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Draco said dryly. We still have to figure out how to actually tell her. What do you mean? Are you going to use Polyjuice Potion again, show up looking like Harry Potter and then transform in front of her? Draco's expression was skeptical. Or are you going to meet her looking like this, looking like me? Harry considered the question. Both options had their risks. Using Polyjuice Potion would allow him to ease into the revelation, but it would also require him to brew another batch and risk the potion wearing off at the wrong moment. Meeting her as himself, as he looked now, would be shocking but honest. I think, Harry said slowly, I will use the Polyjuice. For a while, when I first arrive, so I don't alarm her, but then I'll reveal myself as I am now. If I'm going to tell her the truth, I should do it completely. That's going to be quite a shock, Draco warned. Everything about this situation is shocking, Harry replied. At least this way there's no deception involved. I want her to know who I really am. Draco nodded reluctantly. All right, when do you want to do this? Soon, Harry said. I'll send her another letter tonight, asking her to meet us, somewhere private where we can talk without being interrupted. The Room of Requirement. No, I don't want her to know we're using the Room of Requirement. Not yet. Harry thought for a moment. The Astronomy Tower, I think. It's a better choice. It's usually empty at night, and we can see if anyone's coming. All right, Draco agreed. But Harry, are you sure about this? Once we tell her there's no going back, she'll know everything. Harry looked at his brother, his twin, his identical mirror, and felt a surge of determination. I'm sure. I can't keep living in hiding, can't keep pretending that this isn't happening. Hermione deserves to know the truth, and I deserve to have at least one friend who knows who I really am. Even if you're not sure who that is anymore. Especially then, Harry said quietly. Maybe she can help me figure it out. Draco studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. All right, let's write that letter. As Harry moved to find parchment and quill, he felt a mixture of terror and hope. Tomorrow night, he would reveal his greatest secret to one of the people he trusted most in the world. Whatever happened next, at least he wouldn't be facing it alone. Next chapter. Not able to keep it a secret anymore, Draco tells someone he is close to the truth about having a twin. Later, Harry shows a stunned Hermione his true form. Will she be able to cope with the truth? Chapter 10. The Unraveling. Chapter 10. Unraveling. Harry sat in the room of requirement, staring at the fire crackling in the hearth. Draco had been gone a long time, too long. He couldn't help but feel that something wasn't right. Time passed slowly, and the ever-familiar weight of anxiety pressed against his chest as he waited for Draco to return. Every possible scenario had played through his mind at least a dozen times, each one worse than the last. When the door finally opened, Harry looked up to see Draco stepping inside, his expression carefully neutral. It was a look Harry had come to recognize, the same mask Draco wore when he was processing something significant. "Well," Harry asked, setting aside the book he'd been pretending to read, "where have you been?" "I talked to Snape." Harry stared at him for an unreadable amount of time and then scoffed. "What?" "I needed to speak to someone about all of this." Draco seemed to defend himself. "Telling Hermione is one thing. I deserve to talk to someone I trust." Draco pressed and frowned. "You told someone you trust. It's only fair that I should talk to Snape." "Out of all people," Harry began. "Snape hates me. We should have talked about this." Draco moved to his usual chair and sat down heavily. "But he knows about the twins," he said without preamble. Harry felt his stomach drop. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that I'd discovered I have a brother who's here at Hogwarts. That I'd found out about the adoption." Draco's voice was measured, careful. "I didn't mention your name, but I watched his face carefully. He knows, Harry. He knows about what my parents did, about the twin they gave away. He didn't say for sure, but I think he knows it's you, that it's Harry Potter." "Did he seem surprised?" "Yes, but not enough. That's what convinced me he already knew." Draco leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. "When I told him I'd found my brother, he didn't even blink. He just asked if I was certain, and when I said yes, he nodded like he'd been expecting this conversation for years." Harry tried to process this information. "So he knows about the twins, but he didn't admit to knowing it's me." "Not yet. But Harry—" Draco paused, meeting his eyes. "The way he looked at me when I was talking, the questions he asked, I think he suspects. He's too smart not to have put the pieces together, especially with you missing from classes and meals. And the potion." Harry had almost forgotten about the potion that probably gave it all away, even if Snape only suspected it was him before he knew for sure now. "What did he say?" "He told me to be careful, that this kind of knowledge is dangerous, and that I should think very carefully about who I trust with it." Draco's expression was grim. "He also said that he's always been willing to help me if I need it, but that some secrets are bigger than others. I don't know how to feel about this. It's Snape. He's my godfather, you forget. I know we seem distant, but he's close to our family," Draco reminded him. "He's trustworthy." Harry stood up and began pacing, a habit he'd developed over the past week. "I'm conflicted. On one hand, we have an adult who knows something but isn't saying how much. That's something, I suppose. But on the other hand, it's more than we had before," Draco pointed out, "and it confirms what I suspected, that there are people who have been aware of this situation for a long time, people who have been keeping secrets to protect us." "Or to protect themselves," Harry said bitterly. "Maybe both." They sat in silence for a few moments, both lost in their own thoughts. Harry found himself thinking about all the times Snape had looked at him strangely over the years, all the comments that had seemed oddly personal. Had he known this whole time? Had he only been angry with Harry Potter, son of James Potter, for the way he looked, the resemblance to his father? Had he known the truth, and for how long? "Are you ready for tonight?" Draco asked eventually. Harry's stomach tightened. Tonight, he would meet with Hermione and tell her everything. The thought terrified him. "I brewed the polyjuice potion this morning. It should be ready by now." "You don't have to do this, you know," Draco said quietly. "We could find another way." "No," Harry said firmly. "I need to do this. I need at least one person to know the truth, someone who's been my friend, who knows me as I was before all of this." He gestured to his face, to the Malfoy features that still felt foreign to him. "Maybe she can help me figure out who I am now." Draco nodded. "I'll be nearby, like we planned. If you need me." "I know." Harry moved toward the small cauldron where the polyjuice potion was bubbling. "I should go. We agreed to meet at 9, and I need time to get to the astronomy tower." "Harry," Draco's voice stopped him. Whatever happens tonight, whatever her reaction is, you're still my brother. That remains the same." Harry felt a surge of gratitude mixed with fear. It was the first time that Draco had admitted it out loud, not in a sarcastic, obnoxious way, but supportive. "I know." "Thank you." He ladled the potion into a small vial and drank it quickly, trying not to think about the muddy taste. The familiar sensation of his bones shifting and reshaping washed over him, and within moments, he was looking at the world through his old eyes, seeing his old hands, feeling the weight of his old body. For a moment, he just stood there, staring at his reflection in the dark window. Harry Potter stared back, messy black hair, green eyes, the lightning bolt scar that had defined him for so long. It seemed like clarification that his whole life had been a lie, that even his infamous scar had been part of the glamour. It felt like putting on a costume now, like pretending to be someone he wasn't sure he'd ever really been. "Are you all right?" Draco asked, and Harry realized he'd been staring at his reflection for several minutes. "It's strange," Harry said, his voice back to its familiar pitch. "Looking like this again. It feels wrong somehow." "It's still you," Draco said. "Just a different version." Harry nodded, though he wasn't sure he believed it. He gathered his invisibility cloak and headed for the door. "I'll see you later. Good luck." The astronomy tower was empty when Harry arrived, just as they'd hoped. He'd climbed the stairs under his invisibility cloak, though he'd removed it once he'd confirmed he was alone. The night air was crisp, and he could see his breath in small puffs as he waited. Hermione arrived exactly at 9, her footsteps echoing in the circular room. She looked worried, her bushy hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her robes wrinkled as if she'd been studying. "Harry," she called softly. "Are you here?" "I'm here," he said, stepping out of the shadows. The relief on her face was immediate and overwhelming. "Oh, thank Merlin," she breathed, rushing toward him. "I've been so worried. You missed defense against the dark arts yesterday, and Ron said you weren't at dinner again," and she stopped in front of him, searching his face. "Are you all right? You seem off." Harry's heart was pounding. "I need to tell you something, Hermione, something important." Her expression immediately grew serious. "What is it?" For a moment, Harry just stood there, looking at his best friend, one of the few people who had never questioned his identity, who had always accepted him exactly as he was. The thought of changing that, of potentially losing her friendship, made him feel sick. "Harry," she prompted gently. "I've been hiding something," he said finally. "Something big, and I can't do it anymore." "Hiding what?" Harry took a deep breath. I'm not who you think I am." Hermione's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm not Harry Potter. Not really." The words came out in a rush, and once he started, he couldn't stop. "I found out a few weeks ago in potions class. There was this assignment, a heritage marker potion, and when I brewed it, the results were wrong. They showed a different bloodline entirely." "That's impossible," Hermione said immediately. "Potions can be contaminated, ingredients can be mislabeled. We checked, multiple times, with different ingredients, different cauldrons, different everything." Harry's voice was getting higher, more desperate. "And then we brewed another potion, an ancient one called the Kinship Draft, and it confirmed what the first one showed." "We?" Hermione's voice was sharp. "Who's we?" Harry hesitated. "I can't tell you that yet, but Hermione, I need you to listen to me, really listen, because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane." She nodded slowly, her expression wary but attentive. "I'm not James and Lily Potter's son," Harry said. "I was adopted. My entire identity, my appearance, everything, has all been hidden by magical glamours. The parents I thought I had, the family I thought I came from, none of it is real." Hermione stared at him, her mouth slightly open. "Harry, that's impossible. You have your father's eyes, your mother's. Glamours," Harry interrupted. "Powerful ones, ones that have been in place since I was a baby." He could feel the emotion building in his chest, threatening to overwhelm him. "Everything I thought I knew about myself is a lie, Hermione. Everything. Even the scar wasn't real. The one thing that I thought defined me." "But why?" she whispered. "Why would someone do that? To protect me, to hide me from someone who wanted to use me, to turn me into something I wasn't." Harry's voice cracked slightly. "I can't tell you everything yet, but I need you to know that what you're seeing right now, this face, this body, it's not real either." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm using Polyjuice Potion," Harry said, "to look like Harry Potter, because the glamours were removed a few days ago, and underneath—" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Hermione was staring at him with wide eyes. "Underneath what?" I look like someone else, someone you know, someone you're not going to like. Harry, you're scaring me. I'm scared too, he admitted. I've been scared for days. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what's real and what isn't. I've been hiding in a secret room, afraid to let anyone see me, afraid of what people will think when they find out the truth. What truth? Hermione's voice was barely above a whisper. Harry looked at her, this brilliant, loyal friend who had stood by him through everything. The truth about who I really am, about what family I was really born into. Tell me. I can't. Not yet. But in just a few minutes, the polyjuice potion is going to wear off, and you're going to see for yourself. Harry's hands were shaking now. And when you do, I need you to remember that I'm still me. I'm still the person you've been friends with for 6 years. Harry, I'm still the person who values your friendship more than anything, he continued, his voice breaking slightly. I'm still the person who trusts you more than anyone else in the world. And I'm praying, that you'll still be my friend when you see who I really am. Hermione was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Of course I'll still be your friend, she said finally. Whatever this is, whatever you think you've discovered, it doesn't change the fact that you're one of the most important people in my life. Harry felt tears prick at his eyes, but he blinked them away. Don't say that yet. Wait until you see. See what? Before Harry could answer, he felt the familiar sensation of his bones shifting, his face changing, his hair lightening from black to platinum blonde. He watched Hermione's expression change from confusion to shock to something that might have been fear. When the transformation was complete, Harry stood before her looking exactly like Draco Malfoy. Hermione's hand flew to her robes, pulling out her wand and pointing it at him with shaking fingers. Malfoy, she demanded, her voice high and tight. What have you done with Harry? Hermione, please, Harry started, but she cut him off. You're not Harry. Harry doesn't look like this. She gestured at his face with her wand. Where is he? What did you do to him? Everything I told you was true, Harry said desperately. I am Harry. This is just what I really look like without the glamours. That's impossible, she said, but her voice was less certain now. I know it's impossible. I know it doesn't make sense, but it's the truth. Before Harry could say anything else, footsteps echoed in the stairwell. Hermione spun around, her wand still raised, as Draco appeared in the doorway. He was wearing his school robes, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. It's all right, Draco said calmly. Don't be afraid. Hermione's eyes darted between the two identical faces, her wand wavering. I don't understand. Everything Harry's been telling you is the truth, Draco said, his voice gentle but firm. I know it's shocking, I know it's hard to believe, but he really is who he says he is. But you're Malfoy, Hermione stammered. I am, Draco confirmed. And he's my brother. Hermione stared at them both, her face pale in the moonlight. Harry could see her brilliant mind working, trying to process what she was seeing, trying to make sense of the impossible. Twins, she whispered finally. Twins, Harry confirmed. She lowered her wand slowly, her eyes never leaving their faces. How is this possible? Is it possible? It's a long story, Harry said. But I promise you I'll tell you everything, if you want to hear it. Hermione looked at them both for a long moment. Harry in his casual clothes, Draco in his school robes, two identical faces with completely different expressions. Finally, she nodded. I want to hear it, she said. I want to hear everything. Harry felt a surge of relief so strong it nearly knocked him over. She was still here. She was still listening. Maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have to face this alone after all.